This DIY was one of the most unexpectedly frustrating projects I've ever made. So many things went wrong here that I wanted to scrap this video completely, but I decided to edit it in the end. It all began with this video last year where I tested out these Catch Teenieping squishy kits. If you've watched that video, then you remember that I wasn't very impressed because it was essentially a duplicate of rainbow jellies with less materials inside. The illustrations also made it look like the squishies would be see-through, but the final material was the same opaque silicone that you get with rainbow jellies. I mentioned at the end of that video that I wanted to try remaking these with my own silicone to see if I can get a nicer result. My plan is to use the same two molds with the faces from this refill pack and my own taba squishy gel. However, upon opening this package, I was shocked to discover that it doesn't come with faces at all. This makes no sense because how are people supposed to make more squishies if they don't have the most crucial part? Even in the original kit, I was puzzled why they give you 2 packs of silicone but just one face. My daughter and I love Catch Teenieping and we have so many toys and collectibles from the series. The quality is usually very good, but I feel that this kit is an unusually poor example. The plastic on the molds broke extremely quickly, and you can see that the clasp on the blue one has completely fallen apart. I decided to just make the body first and worry about the face later. I also realized that the molds only work with the special nozzle from these pouches. So I'm going to cut this one open, remove the silicone pods and refill it with my own mixture. I'm using a transparent taba gel for the base and adding some glitter flakes inside. This is the main character Heart's Ping, and her color scheme is always pink. I really like the effect here and it looks a lot more exciting than the pink silicone from the kit. I'm pouring this into the prepared pack and also greasing the mold generously with Vaseline. It was much harder than I expected to squeeze the silicone inside because the nozzle kept getting blocked by glitter. I had to remove the bag and manually clean the nozzle several times before I managed to get everything inside. The only thing I'm impressed by in this whole kit is how well the 3-dimensional mold is made. There's a tiny overflow hole inside and you can look through the transparent part of the diamond to see if it's getting full. Now let's make the blue one, who's called Trust Ping. Once again, I'm removing the silicone pods and only keeping the outer packaging. Then I'm mixing up a batch of clear taba gel and adding some blue glitter. I felt this wasn't blue enough, so I decided to add a bit of silicone pigment as well. This is the mold with a broken clasp, so I had to stop halfway and wrap it closed with tape. My biggest worry here is that there's going to be air bubbles or leakage. Silicone coming out of the overflow isn't necessarily a guarantee, because that happened the first time as well and I still had an air bubble on Trust Ping's back. But to my pleasant surprise, both of these cured really well the next day. I love this taba squishy texture and the effect of the glitter. So now I'm back with the problem of how to make the eyes. Taba squishy details tend to be made from taba silicone as well, so the colors don't slide off when you squish it. But because taba gel is liquid, I need to create a mold for every color inside the eye. I'm going to start with the polymer clay model and making lots of eyes at once. This is a good idea because you can simply pick out the best 2 in the end. This part was really tricky because it's much smaller than what I'm used to sculpting. After baking, I'm going to create the molds with 2-part silicone putty. I have to say these turned out better than I expected, but this is the point where everything starts going wrong. First, I'm mixing up a black silicone for the eyelashes. I have to mention that this was filmed before my previous video where I had a much better black pigment. The one I'm using now is quite translucent, and the problem is that using too much color also affects the curing process. You might be able to see that it's not fully opaque here. I waited 20 minutes, which is usually the time where you can pour 2 taba gels on top of each other without them mixing together. Then I made a batch of white and added this for the base of the eye. And lastly, I made some pink for the pupils. I let these cure completely, but I realized that something was wrong when I started demolding them. The white silicone has mixed into the black and it doesn't look very good. I think it might have been due to the pigment preventing it from curing properly. Even with the pupil added on top, this eye just feels quite clumsy and not very detailed. I feel this really doesn't fit with the delicate design of the body. So I'm going to scrap the entire idea of making taba squishy eyes and go back to my original plan, which was to paint on all the details. Each Teenieping actually has slightly different eyes, so I think this method would look much better in the end. One of my complaints with the original kit is that all the face pieces are the same, despite each Teenieping having unique features. I'm going to use acrylic paint. This part requires an incredibly steady hand because the details are so tiny. I'm switching between a thin brush and the tip of a toothpick to get all the shading done. The only upside of painting on silicone is that if you mess up completely, you can always scratch off the paint and start again. However, this is also a problem because it means you can't squish the piece too roughly or the details will come off. I need to figure out a way to preserve this design so I don't accidentally lose all the work I'm doing here. But just as predicted, I find the painted eyes look so much nicer than the squishy ones. For this one, I'm going to paint the pupils looking sideways just to change things up a bit. Trust Ping is a boy, so I don't have to add extra eyelashes, which makes it a tiny bit easier. A tip for making manga eyes is to make the color underneath the shine spot as dark as possible. This contrast really makes the highlight pop out. Now I can finally demold the squishy, and I'm really happy that there are no air bubbles in the back. This feels great, however I'm being very careful not to touch the painted area. Heart's Ping came out perfectly as well. The texture is great, but these can definitely not be put inside a plastic bag like a normal taba. The paint from the eyes and mouth would stick and rub off immediately. So the idea I have is to try preserving this inside a clear ball. In this video, I placed an axolotl inside a clear taba, so I want to try the same method here. I'm starting with a plastic decoration ball and greasing it well with Vaseline. Then I'm mixing a tiny batch of clear silicone and filling it about 2/3 of the way. This has to fully cure before placing the Teenieping inside. In my axolotl video, I was able to flip one side around and close the ball in one step. Unfortunately, the taba didn't stick very well, so I had to wait until the silicone cured a second time before trying to fill it up. And once again, this is where things started to go wrong. I had major problems getting the silicone to stay inside the ball. As you can see here, it looks almost fully airtight, but a tiny movement meant that all the silicone spilled out again. I know this isn't the best method for making a round taba, but it worked fairly well in my other video, so I didn't expect it to be this hard. I ended up wasting so much clear taba gel that I decided to rage quit and just leave the squishy the way it is. To be honest, this still looks quite nice because there's enough silicone covering Heartspring's face and I can squeeze it freely without anything moving around. As you can see, the acrylic paint doesn't budge, and this is an effective method for preserving details. Despite this DIY producing so many problems, I'm actually quite happy with the results. I also decided to buy a set of round silicone molds, which is obviously the better method for making spherical squishies. In future, I'll be using these for my clear tabas instead of the plastic balls. I'm Joanna, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye!